The individual mandate was upheld not because under the Commerce Clause, but surprisingly, because Chief Justice Roberts argued that it qualifies as a tax, and the Constitution gives the government the power to tax. Talking there, Paul Vigna, who joins me now, about the penalty on people who don't buy insurance, saying that because it's collected by the IRS, it is essentially a tax, and therefore it is constitutional.
You know, I mean, you look at it from a business point of view.
Yeah,
the biggest takeaway from this is that this headache's over. Whatever they were going to decide, whether they struck it down, companies would learn to live with it, right? So now they're going to learn to live with it. So that's the biggest thing, that this uncertainty is now past companies and they can start just reacting. And actually, I mean, the fact that they held it up is probably, at least on the margins, a good thing, because companies had started to prepare for this act as it existed, so that they didn't strike it down means that nobody has to go back and scramble.
Although, take a look, we're looking at Aetna right now, obviously one of the big health insurers, down a bit on the decision. Health stocks in general are down a bit on the decision.
This is interesting. Health stocks were down. The sector was down before the decision came out, and the sector's down after the decision came out. Broadly speaking, there wasn't a huge reaction. But when you start looking within healthcare at the winners and losers, the hospital stocks, like Tenet's up about 10, 11%. The hospital stocks are big winners right now because under the assumption that they are now going to get a flood of new patients.
The
new business might hurt the margins.
Well,
but,
hospitals historically, hospitals have frequently gotten stuck with the cost of uncompensated care. If you don't have insurance and then you're in an automobile accident, you go to the hospital.
Room, they don't turn you away. Insurance stocks, we just saw Aetna, are down. They're the ones that are losing. Aetna, Cigna, United Health. But it's very interesting for insurance stocks, because we had an interview a week or two ago with Aetna's CEO who said, look, no matter what happens with this, there are new things that we are doing. The Affordable Care Act spurred us to make changes that we needed to make anyhow, and no matter what the Supreme Court rules, we're probably going to keep a lot of those advances, a lot of those changes. So for the insurance companies, it actually is not as big a blow as you might think.
Well, interesting. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that in a second. Well, let's talk about that right now, because as I've been arguing this morning, what Chief Justice Roberts did was basically take us back to where we were 10 years ago or 15 years ago, thinking about the individual mandate as a key portion of a plan that keeps healthcare rooted in the private sector as an alternative to a socialized medicine system, which we know is constitutional. It's just that a lot of people think it's the wrong way to go for our healthcare system. I would think part of the mixed reaction among insurance companies is, over the long term, this decision by the Supreme Court may increase the likelihood that we do find a private sector, or at least largely private sector, solution to our healthcare problems.
Right, and look, this was basically a government-mandated private sector solution. I mean, that's what it is, right? The healthcare industry was involved in writing this bill. This is basically this is the insurance company's business model has now been codified into law. This is everybody gets covered, and the insurance companies manage to pay out the benefits for the sick people by taking money from all the health bill. That's how insurance works.
And without the mandate, insurance could fail. In other words, if people had the ability to wait until they got sick to get insurance, insurance
they don't
fails.
buy it, and insurance companies don't have that pool of money with which to pay out the benefits, the claims. Now that will change. Go ahead.
Just one more thing before we're going to go back to the Supreme Court and get some more comments from Jess Braven, who's been reading through the decision. But one thing I want to bring up with you before we leave this question of implications for the business community. This does not remove uncertainty. I mean, you're going to have Romney continuing to say on the campaign trail, repeal and replace. So what happens post-election? This is not a stable piece of law. It is a partisan law, highly attacked by the right. What happens post-election from the business point of view has to be very much up in the air.
If the GOP takes back the Senate and the House and everything, yeah, I mean, then you will have those issues again. But I mean, look, there's only so much you can do, right? I mean, here's the law. The Supreme Court has ruled on it. It exists right now. Companies have already been moving towards complying with it. They're going to have to continue that. And it's going to affect everybody. It's interesting. It's going to affect everybody. I mean, even a company like Domino's, which now has to,
it affects.
They have to comply with different calorie requirements. Like weird companies that you wouldn't think would be affected.